Charlotte Brontë, you make me blush. The need but can't get, the want but can't have, and like last year I read 7 books. And I'm not ashamed of it. Oh my god, so good. Hi, I'm Hazel. I wanted to make a video about everything I read in the month of Jan. So here we go. This is the first book. This is Shirley by Charlotte Brontë. My god, Charlotte Brontë. She is one of my favorite writers. So if you see the topmost shelf there, right there, that is like, I think you can see the spine of Jane Eyre. Anyway, that topmost shelf is like my favorite writer. So you have Hanif Abdurraqib, Hong Kong, and you have Charlotte Brontë. I've read Villette, I've read Jane Eyre. I love Villette. And this one, Shirley, I did not love this. I did not love it the way I wanted to. I did like it. I'm gonna get into like why you should read this book anyway and why it's nice and what I liked about it. If you see me looking over here, this is my laptop, this is where my notes are. So let's start with the plot. This book is set in the 19th century. So we have the Industrial Revolution going on. There's a lot of economic struggle, a lot of like worker strikes, a lot of class divides. That's the context this book is set in. And so our first male protagonist is Robert Moore, and he is a mill owner, and he's basically bought some machines, like some industrial machinery. So he's letting his workers go. So there's like a lot of discontent and a lot of strife because he's basically robbing people of their job and he's letting them go. And there's also like a bit of a romance going on. He may or may not like his cousin, whose name is Caroline. Caroline is like pining, yearning, loving him. And then we have the titular Shirley. So Shirley is introduced like 200 pages in. She is Caroline's friend. She becomes her friend. And so we also have this romance of Shirley with Louis, or Louis. Louis is Robert's brother. So it goes like Robert may or may not like Caroline. Caroline definitely loves him. And then Robert is set on marrying Shirley, who loves Louis, his brother. But Robert wants to marry Shirley because she has a bunch of money and she could save his mill from the economic ruin that he is going through. Very questionable, I know. So the things I liked. Firstly, I loved Shirley because she is just so sprightly. She was such a joy to read. Usually like in the Victorian era, like the women are expected to be like very prim and proper and everything's very like but like Shirley is just this breath of fresh air. She's so sprightly, she's so bright, she's so joyous, and she's so independent, and she is like assertive where she needs to be. She says what needs to be said, and like she treats people how they need to be treated, but at the same time she just gives in to like her whims and fancies, and she just does what she wants, and she's impulsive where she needs to be, she's fun where she needs to be, and she was just a treat to read. And then there were these passages in the book, few and far between, but like there were these passages where the characters are going on these rants or like these ruminations on the gender divide and the class divide and patriarchy and how women were not allowed to work back then, and the repercussions of that, and how it can almost kill a person, and how dependent you're forced to be on your male family members, but just basically why you need work, you need some purpose and meaning, and how stifling and boring it can be to just sit in your house all day and do nothing but like sew and talk about men and talk about marriage. One of the most important themes that like I think Brontë was trying to depict in this novel is just this, through the contrast of Shirley and Caroline, I think she was trying to show two kind of polar opposites, and how your nature and how your life can become when you have money versus when you are dependent on other people. So Shirley is financially independent, and even back then, even though it was like the 19th century, she was still doing whatever she wanted to do. She could do with her money and property whatever she wanted to do. She could marry whoever she wanted, even if like the annoying relatives were like interfering, but she could like make her own choices. And as a result, I mean, even because of her nature, but even as a result of that financial independence, she is so, it was almost like reading night and day. She is the day, she is like the sun, she shines so bright. And then you have Caroline, and she is such a stark contrast. She also like has her love troubles going on that make her like really sad and melancholic, but it's also because she doesn't have company, she doesn't have anything to do. And then there are these beautiful like passages in the book where she talks about like how important it is for women to be allowed to dream and be allowed to work, and how bored she was, but more than that, how humiliating it can be, and how demeaning it can be, and how purposeless life can seem without having company, like also like social company, because Caroline was really deprived of that, but also like a proper purpose and financial independence because she just depended on her uncle, who was maybe not the best mentor to her. So I wanted to read out this beautiful bit of like this extended thought she's having essentially about what happens when women aren't educated, they aren't allowed to work. The brothers of girls are everyone in business or in professions. They have something to do. Their sisters have no earthly employment but household work and sewing, no earthly pleasure but an unprofitable visiting, and no hope in all their life to come of anything better. The stagnant state of things makes them decline, in health, they are never well, and their minds and views shrink to wondrous narrowness. The great wish, the sole aim of every one of them is to be married, but the majority will never marry. They will die as they now live. They scheme, they plot, they dress to ensnare husbands. The gentlemen turn them into ridicule. They don't want them. They hold them very cheap. What do men expect women to do at home? If you ask, they would answer, sew and cook. They expect them to do this and this only, contentedly, regularly, uncomplainingly, all their lives, as if they had no germs or faculties for anything else, a doctrine as reasonable to hold as it would be that the fathers have no faculties. Could men live so themselves? Would they not be very wary? Keep your girls' minds narrow and fettered. They will still be a plague and a care, sometimes a disgrace to you. Cultivate them, give them scope and work, and they will be your gayest companions in health, your tenderest nurses in sickness, and your most faithful prop in age. So I think for back then, this was like a pretty feminist and pretty strong opinion to have, and I think that when this book was published, it also like did meet some criticism because of the views that Charlotte Brontë was advocating in this book. Because I'm watching Bridgerton season 4 right now, and you see that part of it where most of the women are so, they're depicted, or maybe they were like that back then too, when they're so like intent on just capturing a husband and just getting married off and just choosing a suitor or whatever. And that's because they didn't have anything else to do, and they weren't allowed to work, they weren't allowed to be educated, and also their only means of security back then was to get themselves a husband who they then had to depend on for the rest of their lives. So I think that like that part really shines through the contrast between Shirley and Caroline, and the kind of stark contrast in nature that can take place when a woman is free, financially independent, and when a woman has to like depend on others and doesn't have any choice, any freedom at all. So my favorite part of the book was like the last 100 pages, because the second romance that takes place between Shirley and Lewis, that was so good. But Lewis unfortunately is introduced only like in the last 150 pages or so. Both of these characters, they are so richly drawn, and they're so interesting, and they're so like made for each other. They understand each other so well, and like they also understand the deficiencies in each other's characters and what each provides to like make up for those. And I don't know, it's just very beautiful. And like the yearning, the passion, like the need but can't get, the want but can't have, and like the kind of like sweet torture that I think love can like make you suffer through and like enjoy that also. Because of these reasons, like I love the last 100 pages, I think, more than the first 500, like the entire thing, because the romance was so good. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, so this is what Lewis is writing. Basically, we're at a point where Shirley's not talking to Lewis, and Lewis wants her attention in some way, and he wants her to talk to her. So he kind of hides her things, which is, I'm like, but he hides a few of her things, like her purse and her glove and her pen. And then he's writing in his journal, he like, because I've hidden these, she'll have to talk to me. So this is what he's writing in his journal, and he's like, she'll have to come to me for them. She shall wring them all out of me, slowly and separately, only by confession, penitence, and entreaty. I never can touch her hand, or a ringlet of her head, or a ribbon of her dress, but I will make privileges for myself. Every feature of her face, her bright eyes, her lips, shall go through each change they know, for my pleasure. Display each exquisite variety of glance and curve, to delight, thrill, perhaps more hopelessly, to enchain me. If I must be her slave, I will not lose my freedom for nothing. Charlotte Brontë, you make me blush. So good. Like, I've hardly book tabbed this, but like the last entire, I think this part is just lines like this. Beautiful to read. So why didn't I love this book, right? Like, it seems to have all of the perfect ingredients, but I still didn't like love it. There was something that I still wanted from it, and that's because, well, the first reason is it didn't seem cohesive. The theme seemed undecided. So like, she didn't dive, like the writer did not fully dive into one theme and explore it fully. And that's not a problem, because your book can be about like multiple things. But I feel kind of robbed that like not even one theme was explored fully, in the sense that like I have read North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, who was a contemporary and I think a close friend of Charlotte Brontë, and North and South was literally about class conflict and love, and it explored those themes fully and went into like the thoughts, the feelings of the characters and the class conflict. Elizabeth Gaskell did not shy away from writing about the class conflict, and over here I felt like that's what the context was, so I felt like that was what it was going to be about. In the beginning, I wanted it to be more about the Industrial Revolution, about the consequences of it, about the consequences of poverty and strife, and the conflict between the workers and the mill owners. And maybe I was like influenced by my reading of North and South a little bit, but then that was not explored. And then we moved to like the romance, so I thought, okay, maybe it's going to be about love, but then even that wasn't like fully explored to my liking. Like I said, that the last 100 pages, like we really delved into Lewis and Shirley's romance. So I could have actually, even if the whole book was just about Lewis and Shirley and their romance, I would have loved it so much because it was so good. But I only got like 100 pages of that, and for the most part we were focusing on like Caroline and Robert, and I did not feel like they were a good match, and like I didn't really love their bond or whatever, not as much as I did the other couples at least. And yeah, just that thing of like not going into a theme fully. Like I've read Villette, so I know that this woman can write. Like the way that she properly delved into themes of love and heartbreak and emotional resilience and emotional turmoil and strength, and all of these themes in Villette were amazing, and her writing there was so memorable, so beautiful, and so like gut-wrenching. It was amazing, and I still remember it to this day, and I want to reread it. And what kind of pinches you a bit is that in this book, if you read Villette and Jane Eyre, and then if you read Shirley, you will see those moments where you're reminded of like Charlotte Bronte's writing, because she is writing it, but like you are reminded of the Villette like or Jane Eyre like writing, because you know it's still Charlotte Bronte writing it. There'll be like every now and then there will be these dramatic like sentences and like these creative turns of phrase, or like just her observations, which are so beautifully written and so wholly original, but like not rare, but like it felt like they were threaded through the story versus like the story being made up of that kind of rich writing and depth. So that was one reason. Yeah, at the same time, this thing bothered me of like not having one main protagonist, but I guess it's just that because I'm used to like Jane Eyre was one protagonist and then it was completely her journey, or Villette was one Lucy Snow and then it was completely her journey. But even if there were multiple protagonists, it wasn't like we were diving into each of their heads. It wasn't like that. I thought it would be about all of them meeting each other and their lives kind of intertwining the four of these characters, but it wasn't like that. In fact, some characters were not introduced for hundreds of pages, and then we would lose track of like some characters for hundreds of pages altogether, and so that kind of felt disjointed to me a little bit. So yeah, I was just like missing that connection between the characters and like the depth of their bond, I guess. But overall, still a great read, and still something that I absolutely had to read because it's Charlotte Bronte. So definitely, I think, add it to your reading list or whatever. The next thing I read was a newsletter by Maria Popova. So she has a blog called The Marginalian. So I'm gonna link that particular blog post in the description somewhere so you can read it. And it was called What Love Really Means. And in that blog post, she is referring to this essay called The Sublime and the Good by Iris Murdoch. So I have a whole video about that essay by Iris Murdoch, so go check that out. I'll link it. I'm just gonna read you like a little bit of that essay, one quote, and it says, "Love is the perception of individuals. Love is the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real. Love is the discovery of reality. What stuns us into a realization of our supersensible destiny is unutterable particularity, and most particular and individual of all natural things is the mind of man." So in The Marginalian, when Maria Popova introduces this quote, she writes below that it's called the Golden Rule, which is like common in a lot of religions, which basically says that love others as you would wish to be loved. But basically Iris Murdoch says that love is the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real. So I wrote my notes on this, and I said realizing that this individual is another who has a different world inside them, distinct to ours, and we will only ever see a version of them, regardless of how long or how much we think we may know them, and that we must leave some space or some benefit of doubt for those parts of them that do not align with our view of them, for even the day that they are is ever evolving. Severance reference. And then when Iris Murdoch talks about super sensible destiny, so I've written super sensible in the way that others are always going to be in some way out of reach. So the people in our lives, our loved ones, they're always going to be kind of out of our reach, and we're never going to be able to like fully figure them out. And I've written that resisting that fact and trying to pull them in to fit the mold that you know them in is not only not your right or duty, but it's also something that becomes painful and can kind of lead to you becoming a little controlling. Anyway, I don't want to like keep ranting about this because I have a whole video on it, so check it out. I will link it. And then my last book that I want to talk about, the last read, is The Letters of Vincent van Gogh, written obviously by Vincent van Gogh. So I have a whole video on this too. I will link it. I haven't finished it yet. I've only read like this much, but I felt right to talk about him for the third time online because because of his Vincent van Gogh, and it sniffs so nice. I'm so sorry I did that. I'm not sorry, it sniffs amazing. But this book is amazing. It is basically his letters to, I think most of them or all of them are his letters to his brother Theo. And Van Gogh, at least in the part that I've read so far, he is talking about, he's quite young. He starts, I think the first letter is when he was like 23 or something. Anyway, he's writing about his religious struggles, his artistic struggles, his mental health, and the kind of family pressure also that he's going through to like find a job and stick to it. So basically in the video where I talk about this book, I'm talking about the intersection of being an artist and being mentally ill, and also having to like work. And this is something that this man was going through like a century and a half ago, and it's something that we still struggle with today. And so I think it's like really relevant. But I also don't want to like not tell you anything about this, so I'm going to read a quote or two. I love doing this. Which page? Honestly, any of them, all of them. Okay, so what I'm gonna read is like, it's not even the best thing in here, but this is basically when Theo, his brother, and Van Gogh haven't spoken for like a year, and his family has kind of not ditched him, but like kind of ditched Van Gogh, and he's not able to like stick with one particular career path. And so his brother has reached out to him and helped him out after a long time. So Theo is writing to like express his gratitude, but also explain why he is the way he is and why he's made certain choices and not being able to like pick a path or whatever. So he says, now one of the reasons why I have no regular job and why I have not had a regular job for years is quite simply that my ideas differ from those of the gentlemen who hand out the jobs to individuals who think as they do. And then he says, as far as my inner self, my way of looking at things and of thinking is concerned, that has not changed. But if there has indeed been a change, then it is that I think, believe, and love more seriously now than what I thought, believed, and loved even then. So please do not think that I am renouncing anything. I am reasonably faithful in my unfaithfulness, and although I have changed, I am still the same. And what preys on my mind is simply this one question: what am I good for? Could I not be of service or use in some way? How can I become more knowledgeable and study some subject or other in depth? So this is just a man who's like, listen, I get it, you're confused about why I've been struggling and why I've not been able to pick one career path, because he's not like fully started painting at this point. A few paintings here and there, but like not fully. And so he's like, I get that you're confused, but I'm not denouncing anything. I am not quitting my way of life and my way of thinking and believing and living the way that I do, even though it's led me to poverty, even though it's led me to like be miserable at times, and really struggle with my mental health. I am reasonably faithful in my unfaithfulness. And I find that line beautiful, obviously. But he's still kind of wondering, why can't I find that thing? And what is that one thing that I'm going to do in my life? And why can't I do it? And can't I just do it? Anyway, I'm still reading this. I'm like slowly reading this, like a letter a day types. But I'm going to keep like talking about this book on my channel because it is so good. So if you're interested in Letters of Vincent van Gogh, I guess you can like check out that video I was talking about. So these were my reads of January 2026, and we started off with a bang, and hopefully I'm gonna like continue to have the best reading year I've ever had. I've not like put a lot of pressure on this year. I just want to read 12 books this year, which is still more than almost double of what I read last year. Last year I read 7 books, and I'm not ashamed of it. But like this year, I think if I read even like 12 books, because that means about like a book a month, and so far I'm on track, then I am happy, because I've made a list of the kinds of books that I want to read and like specific titles as well. But I'm not like being too harsh on myself. Like I'm not plotting out the year that I will read this book in this month and stuff. But every book that I read from the curriculum I've set myself, I add like a fun book of what my mood read is that month, or what I feel like reading that month. So I'm having like a good reading time this year so far, and I hope that continues. Yeah, just like let me know what you're reading, what you're thinking. Drop in recommendations anytime and let me know what you all are reading. And yeah, that's all for today. I hope you have a great day, night, dawn, dusk, whatever, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.